Welcome to episode 2 of Toy Gimmicks, and in today's episode we will be discussing soft goods. That's basically where a figure line employs things such as cloth, fur, or any other soft goods to make their figures stand out, to give them basically extra features, which a lot of collectors really enjoy that. Any collector knows that if you got a character that's got a cape or that's got hair or something along those lines and it's made out of plastic, it kind of takes away from the aesthetic of it. When you have cloth capes, when you have actual fur as hair or, doll hair, it just adds a depth of detail and immersion with the figure itself. Now, this picture here is just a small representation of just stuff in my collection that kind of represents the different types of soft goods that we find in the figure line. Now we're going to start this episode off just by mentioning that some of the earliest action figures with soft goods, and probably one of the best at it, were the original G.I. Joes from the 60s. They came with basically whole packs of accessory outfits, astronaut suits, officer suits, all sorts of different outfits. Now, that was before my time in collecting, so I don't have any in my personal collection. Following them, we would definitely be talking about Mego. Migo came out in the early 70s, and it was a big appeal and kind of merged dolls with action figures to an extent. Migo was also very good with the soft goods. Most, if not all of their figures did have the plastic articulated body, which they were extremely well articulated, especially for their age. But they also employed a wide array of cloth soft goods for their figures. Now, the one pictured here is not an original Migo. This is a reissue, I think, from a couple of years back, maybe a year or two ago. This one features Jimi Hendrix, but you can still see that his pants and his top and his headband are all cloth soft goods. And they are made of 3 different types of materials. You've got the faux suede, kind of corduroy looking pants here. You've got the faux leather style jacket with the tassels, very iconic of him, and then you've got the kind of nylon red headband that goes along with it. Now, even though this is a reissue, still shows the type of stuff that they did use back then. Now, moving on from there, next in line we have Star Wars. Now, these were some of the first 3 3/4 inch figures that kind of brought the action figure down considerably from the predecessors of G.I. Joe and Migo being roughly in the 8-inch plus range. And this made these, the appeal for Star Wars figures just went through the roof. They just really hit the nail on the head when it came to the size and then the 5 points of articulation. So you still get some articulation, not as much as G.I. Joe and Action Man and not as much as Migo, but still when you compare its compact size, that is considerably smaller, making it a little harder probably to incorporate a bunch of joints, especially in that era. Now, the reason why I've got 2 different Star Wars figures here is because, as you can see, you've got 2 different styles of soft goods. You've got the vinyl capes that came with the originals, such as Obi-Wan Kenobi, Lando Calrissian, Princess Leia Organa, Darth Vader, as you can see. And then you have cloth style cloak with this indoor Leia. And it just shows the variation here that they did go from a little more, and I'm assuming that the vinyl was considerably cheaper, and when Star Wars first launched, like many toy lines, they don't throw a whole lot of money into it until they see what kind of traction it gets and how well it takes off. And Star Wars was a great success, so as the line progressed, the figures got a little bit more detailed and they got a little bit, more in depth with the accessories. This one kind of employs the 2 different styles early on, from the late 70s through the early 80s. Our next figure on the list is from John Blackstar. This is Overlord, and he actually has several gimmicks. This toy line did employ a lot of glow-in-the-dark, which was very popular at the time. And he's got the soft good cloak on the back, which is one of the earlier uses of this. He is circa 1983, I want to say. And he actually, there's several gimmicks that he goes with. Got a pet creature that comes with him, so he's part of the pet gimmick, glow-in-the-dark gimmick, and then he's got the soft goods gimmick. Now, when I say gimmick, I do not mean that with any kind of negative connotation. I just mean that they're employing different things to kind of appeal to the consumer, things that make them stand out from the crowd, where you're not just getting a hunk of plastic that, you know, the arms move up and down, the legs move, and that's all you get. They try to spice it up by adding variety, and I think the Blackstar line really did that well. They also have a sparking mechanic or gimmick in some of their figures. So John Blackstar by Gloob really jumped ahead in terms of what they offered their customers. Now, that's not to say, you know, these came out a little bit after Masters of the Universe, and I don't mean to skip over that line. I just didn't have a good example on hand. Another figure that employs a few different gimmicks, we have Shira, Princess of Power, the lady herself. She's circa 1985. And she does employ the soft goods. She's got the kind of see-through skirt, and she's got the pearlescent cape, plus she's got, you know, typical doll hair. This was one of the first action figures that really appealed towards the girls of the generation. She basically taught little girls that, you know, women can wield power just as well as men could. Shira, Princess of Power, will definitely forever hold a place in a lot of people's hearts, both men and women alike, boys and girls alike, just for that. She definitely stands on her own, as well as, you know, a lot of people say she's synonymous with He-Man and Masters of the Universe. And that's true, but she definitely stands on her own 2 feet, if you ask me. And she employs a couple gimmicks. She's got this little gem in her abdomen that the Shira line really utilized. She's got the soft goods, like I said, the cape and the skirt. She's got the plastic armaments with the kind of reflective stickers that were really popular during that time, kind of give them a glimmering, shimmering look to them. She definitely comes with a decent array of accessories. So she definitely makes the list in terms of soft goods and gimmicks. Up next on the list, and it might seem like I skipped her because she is from 1980-1981 by Kenner, is the Strawberry Shortcake line. Now this is Orange Blossom and her little butterfly or caterpillar marmalade. I can't remember what that was. And she employs a few gimmicks, number one being the soft goods. Strawberry Shortcake line definitely came with a lot of cloth accessories, hats, booties, leggings, tops, bottoms, skirts, slippers, and you know, they also incorporated some hard plastic accessories such as shoes and their little pets. And she incorporates a couple gimmicks as well. She's part of the pet gimmick, as well as some of the other figures of the line. And she's got the eye action where you tilt her back and her eyes close. Which is very reminiscent of a lot of dolls predating Strawberry Shortcake. Now this toy line definitely appealed mostly to girls. They kind of tried to make dolls into a type of action figure, and I use that term loosely. They're not super articulated, but they have as much articulation as the old Star Wars figures do with the 5 points. And the fact that they are a little smaller, so I would definitely kind of put those in the action figure category. I know action figure was a term that was pretty much coined mainly to sell dolls, and I use that term loosely, to boys, as dolls were pretty synonymous with girls. So doll was not a very manly sounding term, so the term action figure came to be, and that really set the appeal to sell dolls to boys. Up next in our lineup is the 1984 Sectaurs Warriors of Symbion Trancula. This figure definitely falls into the soft good department because its body is about 75% fur with cloth underneath. And this figure I love. It is by far one of the most iconic figures that I can think of in toy lines from that era. Not only does it fall under the pet department, it falls under the vehicle department, it falls under the soft goods department, and it's got a really amazing gimmick. And this saddle, when you put your figure in there, it actually holds it really snug. It's really well made. It's a little scary to do it now because the figures, the plastic gets so brittle over time. So trying to squeeze your figure into that saddle can be a little anxiety inducing because you definitely don't want to break anything. But the coolest part about this is basically a glove. And when utilized, your hand becomes the legs. And one of your fingers opens and closes the mouth, and the other 4 fingers are the legs. And this just made this toy so amazing and so iconic that anybody who lived in the 80s or was a child of the 80s probably has seen this before and may not remember the name, but remembers what it is. Remember seeing it because this just stands out. You had before Battle Cat, which had its cool armor that came on and converted Cringer into Battle Cat. You had Panther with his cool saddle and his flocking. And both of those are equally iconic, probably more so just due to the popularity of Master of the Universe. This guy, I think, is head and shoulders above them in terms of coolness level. Just what he is, what he does. People are typically freaked out by spiders anyway, so making a toy out of a giant spider was just cool in its own. Up next we have Kenner Superpowers. Now, this is one of my favorite toy lines. This is probably one of the ones that I have the most in terms of collection completeness. And here we have 3 different examples. 2 of them are very similar. One of them is a little different. You've got the iconic Caped Crusader Batman. And what would Batman be without an awesome cape? Now, plenty of renditions of Batman. He comes with this plastic cape, which oftentimes throw his center of balance off and make it so where he's really hard to pose because there's no flex in the cape. The cape weighs so much because it is heavy plastic, whereas in the Superpowers version, which is definitely not his first appearance in the toy industry, he does come with the cloth cape, which very lightweight, easily detaches around the neck, so you can take it off, you can put it on, very versatile. And he also, along with this whole toy line, falls in another department of terms of gimmicks, as they have the punching action, the spinning actions where you squeeze their legs or their arms and their body parts do something different. Darkseid here also employs the cape. It's a little different, but pretty much the same. There's got the clasp at the front, a little heavier material. He's a much larger figure, so his cape is a little more impressive in terms of size and design. And he actually has another gimmick with him in the terms of light piping. These figures don't use any electronics, so there's no batteries where you press a button and their eyes glow. This guy, light piping, you can see his eyes are glowing. That's basically because that slot on his head is tubed plastic that feeds his eyes. And as light comes through that top slot, it comes out of his eyes and makes his eyes glow. Super simplistic feature, but it is amazing in terms of how effective it is based on how simple it is. And the third example would be the Samurai here. As you can see, he does not wear a cape or a cloak of sort or of any. He's got like a tunic. The tunic is cloth. This tunic is very oftentimes lost. Now, this tunic isn't sealed on the sides. It's got these little orange kind of ring clasps that make it hug his abdomen and kind of sandwiches on his torso. And it's very delicate. It's a very thin material. It almost kind of feels like very thin felt. It's a good example of kind of the early, how do you give your figures armor without it being bulky plastic molded onto it. Up next on the list is 1988 Cops and Crooks. This is Bulletproof. This figure line is amazing. I think it's super underrated, and it just gets shadowed by some of the bigger names like G.I. Joe, Transformers, Master of the Universe, and even TMNT. Even though it came out around the same time TMNT, and in terms of articulation, it's great. You've got knee joints, you've got elbow joints, you've got shoulder joints. Maybe not elbow joints. I can't remember if all the figures. So we're going to just say knee joints, hip joints, and where the legs can move out and in, forward and back. So it's not just a swivel. It's not just a fixed joint, you know, forward and backwards. Ball joints, if you will. You've got the head turns. They employ multiple gimmicks as well. They have the cap gimmick, which was really popular in the 80s. He's got the trench coat. It's a very simple design. It actually looks like a trench coat. It's definitely cut and shaped like one. And the little pockets and buttons, those are just printed on the fabric. And this guy, in turn, you know, he's one of my favorites. He is the main protagonist of the toy line. So he's kind of like the He-Man of Master of the Universe. And he's like the Duke of G.I. Joe. And he comes with a couple cool accessories. You've got the briefcase here with the handcuffs. You've got this massive gun. You've got the trench coat. And under the trench coat, he's like half android, half cop. Really cool figure if you ask me.